All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a really revolutionary essay by one of the great masters, Henry James. An essay that completely rewrote the rulebook for what a novel could be, and pretty much shattered the old way of telling stories forever.
So let's kick things off with a question. Now, it might seem simple to us today, but this was at the absolute heart of a huge literary debate back in the 19th century. I mean, should a story just be there to entertain you and maybe teach you a little something? Or could it be something bigger?
To really get what a bombshell Henry James was about to drop, we first have to understand the creative cage he was rattling. You have to see the so-called rules that writers back then were supposed to play by.
And this really lays it all out, doesn't it? On one hand, you've got the standard thinking of the day. A novel was a tool, it had to have a clear moral, it was supposed to educate you, and it pretty much had to follow a strict formula. But then you have Henry James, and his vision was totally different. For him, the novel had to be free. Its job was to represent life, and it had no prescribed rules.
All right, so let's get into the man himself, the champion of this new freedom. In 1884, Henry James published his powerful essay, The Art of Fiction. And it wasn't just some piece of literary criticism. No, it was a full-blown artistic manifesto.
And, James wasn't just some nobody trying to stir the pot. By the time 1884 rolled around, he was already a huge deal in the literary world. He'd already written classics like The Portrait of a Lady. So he used that considerable influence to make a couple of incredibly bold claims for his art form.
So his whole argument really boiled down to a couple of huge, kind of revolutionary ideas. First, he argued that the novel deserved to be seen as a serious art form, right up there with painting or classical music. And second, to get to that level, it had to be set completely free from rigid rules, and, this was the really controversial part, free from having to teach you a moral lesson. Okay, so James believed the novel had just one job, one core obligation, one single reason to exist. And this one idea, it would totally redefine what fiction was all about for generations of writers to come. And there it is, simple but so powerful. For James, the whole point of a novel wasn't about the lesson it taught or whether everyone lived happily ever after. Nope. The only reason for it to even exist was its attempt to capture life, to create what he famously called an illusion of life. And look, this is so important. He wasn't talking about just taking a picture of reality. He meant that a novel is a unique, personal impression of life, seen through the mind and the feelings of the artist. A book's success hinged on how well it conveyed that one-of-a-kind perspective. So, okay, if you're going to represent life, you've got to write from experience, right? But James had this incredibly huge and beautiful idea of what experience even was. It wasn't just the list of things you've done. For him, it was this immense sensibility, the very atmosphere inside your own head. It was something that's never finished. And this quote, wow, it's just the perfect way to picture what he meant. He imagined experience like this giant, delicate spider web hanging in your mind. And the slightest little thing, a brief conversation, a passing glance, could send a vibration through those threads and reveal a whole world of meaning to an artist who is paying attention.
So if you follow that thought, the conclusion you come to is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly profound. If every person's experience is this infinite, unique web, then there's just no way there could be a single recipe for capturing reality. It has a million different faces.
But okay, that's a huge, abstract idea, right? So how do you actually do that as a writer? How do you make your story feel real? James said the secret was what he called the solidity of specification. In other words, it's all about the specific, concrete, believable details that make a made-up world feel completely, utterly real. All right, let's get to what was probably his most controversial point. If the novel's main job is to represent all of life, the good, the bad, the messy, well, what does that mean for its moral duties? And James did not mince words here. He said if art is about life, then its playground is everything. All of it. Every feeling, every observation, every dark corner, every single kind of experience. Nothing was off limits. This is his mic drop moment right here. He's drawing a hard line in the sand. He's saying, look, when we talk about art, we should be talking about how well it's made. Is it good at what it's trying to do? Questions about morality, that's a whole different conversation.
And that all leads to his ultimate point. The purpose of art, at the end of the day, is to be good art. Not to be a good citizen or a moral teacher. A novel's quality shouldn't be based on whether it's good for you, but on how perfectly it's crafted, how beautifully it pulls off that illusion of life.
So, fast forward to today. We are swimming in stories on our phones, our TVs, everywhere. Why does this essay from the 1800s still matter so much? What exactly is the legacy of this fight for artistic freedom?
Well, his impact was, frankly, huge. First, he basically freed fiction from having to be a stuffy moral lesson. Second, he helped elevate the novel into the serious, complex art form we know today. And finally, his ideas about what makes a story feel real have shaped everything from classic literature to the amazing TV shows we all binge-watch now.
At the end of the day, that's the real gift he gave us. He championed the idea that a story's truthfulness to the human experience, all the messy, complicated, beautiful, and sometimes ugly parts, is its own reason for being. It doesn't need to teach us how to be good, it just needs to be true to what it feels like to be human.
And that kind of leaves us with a big question to chew on, doesn't it? James fought for fiction's freedom to be true to life. But in our world of AI, deepfakes, and social media, the challenge of what it even means for any story to be true is more complicated and maybe more important than ever before.